let others in later. All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the NYCL STEM career panel designed for high school students and college students. So today, everyone is going to be muted before the very last section of Q&As. At the beginning, I would like to talk about the rules for the panel today. So the first section will be, we have 5 panelists today, and they will be giving presentations no more than 5 minutes. No question will be asked during this time. And later, I'll be leading my name is Tianchi Robin, I'm the host for today, and I'll be asking 4 questions directed to the panelists. Later, the very last section will be Q&As from the participants, where you can raise your hand, virtually raise your hand using the Zoom function, raise hand function, so that I will allow you to unmute yourself, and then you'll be asking questions directly. All right, and for the panelists today, we will go from alphabetical order. So let's see. First of all, we would like to welcome Dr. Shannon Curley, Environmental Research Associate at Fresh Kills Park. Shannon, would you like to unmute yourself and get started? Since we have a tight schedule, I wouldn't be introducing the bios. The bios are available on our Eventbrite site. I'll post the link here again if you're interested in reading it again. Please, Shannon, the baton is yours now. Thank you.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Hi, thank you for having me tonight. I have a few slides prepped, so let me share my screen here. Can everybody see this right now?
Yes.
Great. Okay, so a little bit about me. I got my Bachelor's of Science in Zoology at SUNY Oswego, followed by a Master's in Biology with an emphasis on wildlife biology at East Stroudsburg University. And I finished my PhD last year in biology at the CUNY Graduate Center in Biology with an emphasis on ecology, evolution, and behavior. I primarily focused on how birds are shifting their ranges with climate change, but also how communities and structures, so thinking about groups of species living in a place at a given time, how those communities are changing with climate as well. Currently, I work for New York City Parks. I'm a research associate at Fresh Kills Park, and I'm also an adjunct professor at the College of Staten Island. The pictures you're seeing here are actually Fresh Kills Park. So Fresh Kills Park, and you'll hear a little bit more about this from Eloise in a little bit, I'm sure, was formerly once the world's largest landfill. And 20 years ago, it stopped taking garbage, it became capped through a highly engineered process. And consequently, it's been converted into this green, this grassy green oasis in the middle of New York City, essentially. So on Staten Island, it's about 2,200 acres of converted habitat. And you can see these pictures here. This is a view of one part of the park called, that you're looking at, South Mount. And also, in my opinion, this has one of the best views of New York City while being in New York City. So it's a really pretty amazing place to work. A little bit of the work that we do there is we do what's called bird banding. We're trying to get an idea of what species are coming into this converted habitat and how are they doing. And we do a lot of this with bird banding. So you can see here this little mist net apparatus, and we capture birds. This is a grasshopper sparrow. This is a highly specialized grassland bird. And we have little color bands on them, and that helps us see the birds in the park with the use of binoculars. So we don't have to capture them again. And then this little silver band here has an alphanumeric code that gets entered into a government database. So it's stored there over time. So like I said, Fresh Kills Park is a grassland habitat. Grassland habitats are one of the most imperiled habitats, meaning that they've been in drastic decline, especially with land conversion. And consequently, the birds that live there that really thrive like grasshopper sparrows in these habitats have also declined. But we're seeing at Fresh Kills Park that the birds here are coming to this park and they're doing very well. So we use that bird banding to see how our birds doing. And what we do know is that birds that we band in our park are coming back, the same birds year after year. So they really like this habitat. Interestingly enough, here's a bird here called a sedge wren. This is a species of bird that started breeding at Fresh Kills Park last year And it was the first time this species has been documented breeding in New York City since 1960. So this is a really neat find for us as well. But like you said, I also look at, aside from banding, how birds are shifting with climate change. So we also use this bird banding data. And remember, I said it gets entered into this big database. But we can also look at when other researchers find these birds and record the bands, we can see how birds are shifting over time. So this is just an example of one species I studied called a cackling goose. And you can see that's this bird here. And from banding records, we know that birds that are born here are traveling to the west coast of the United States. And what you're looking at is how they're changing over time, their distances. So the lighter the color, the more recent in time. And what we're seeing with climate is that the migration distance between their breeding and wintering grounds is changing as their latitudes are increasing, or where they're being found at higher latitudes with climate warming. So there's a lot of different things that we can study with the birds here in terms of small scale, like working with the birds in the park and what they're doing, but also on this larger macro scale where we can see how birds are really shifting with climate over time. So that's essentially what I do, and I'm happy to answer more questions later on. Ooh, how do I stop sharing?
All right, thank you, Shannon, for the excellent presentation. Our next panelist, Ms. Eloise Hirsch, is an administrator of Fresh Coast Parks and president of Fresh Coast Park Alliance. Eloise, would you like to get started? Thank you.
Thank you. So I actually have no advanced degrees and have basically what friends call university of experience. I do manage this great transformation project, and it is kind of the culmination of a very, very long career in public service that began in a similarly tumultuous time as now. I began my career during the Vietnam War. I began my career when civil rights was, as it always needs to be, civil rights was front and center. And so I have been working in various positions in government for those times. And I went from basically being a staffer in a mayor's office through a project director, through consulting, through being the chief operating officer of the New York City Parks Department, through being the director of city planning in the city of Pittsburgh, and now finally bringing together all of the management and planning and program experience that I have in that career. What we have done at Fresh Kills, as Shannon said, is we have taken this place, which was a terrible environmental blight on Staten Island, which was loathed by the people of Staten Island, and which was open for 50 years and took a lot of community pressure before it was closed. Once it was closed, the mayor and other sort of major civic citizens came together to say, what shall we do? How should we use this newfound land? Because New York City will never get this much vacant land again. What should we do with it? And there was a planning process and an international planning process, actually. People were very interested in this concept of taking a garbage dump and making it accessible and wonderful for the public. There actually are numbers of these around the globe. Germany has done quite a few. It's very common in Europe, less common in South America, common in the Middle East. but it is, nobody's doing anything quite this big. Um, so what it's, as Shannon said, it's 2,200 acres. It has been closed for these 50 years, and the public has a lot of concerns about it. Is this toxic? Is this safe for my kids to come here and play? And actually, it's highly regulated, and a lot of what we do has to do with communicating that safety. So what we have done over the course of the last, actually, it has been 15 years in development, is that we have developed a series of programs in partnerships with community organizations like NYCL, to bring people to the site, have experiences, and see what is possible, taking what was a loathed and ugly place and making it an extraordinary asset for the city of New York. It has required people management. It has definitely required knowing how to navigate among different kinds of groups and agencies. And it has required an ability to keep going when you think you can't. And I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Louis, for your explanation and all. And we, NYCL, as a nonprofit organization, we have been partnering with a lot with Fresh Skills Park, and we really appreciate their help in educating the public regarding to either the engineering part or the ecology part in the Fresh Skills Park, about educating about the landfill and the turning the waste into energy. All of these topics are so important in, I mean, it's both applicable in the curriculum of the STEM education, and it's also educating the lay people who have never learned anything about them. So thank you so much for your excellent presentations. And our next speaker, our next panelist is Dr. Ziyuan Meng, from Assistant Professor of Computer Science at Drew University. You can unmute yourself, Dr. Meng. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Here's my presentation. Can you see my presentation?
Yes. Yep.
Yes, we do. Thank you.
Just briefly introduce myself. I'm assistant professor at Drew University, and my research and teachings emphasize on cybersecurity, and in particular, I'm emphasized on how to assess the security of web application. Also, security about programming languages. A lot of security issues, can be studied from a language perspective. And particularly, I'm emphasized on secure code analysis and how to just, scan the source code to discover the vulnerability and malware. And I'm also interested in philosophy of technology, which is, interdisciplinary kind of study, how we can borrow the insight from continental European philosophy to have different type of computational logic. So prior to my PhD study, I also work in the industry as a VRSI, very large scale integrated circuit verification engineer at VIA. Well, just to give a very gentle introduction, the importance of my research is that we're living in a world of a digital, sphere, if you will. So many applications has been developed. Unfortunately, many of them, due to human error, there is a vulnerability, a mistake. That is, the fundamental reason we have this, hacking and malware infiltration. So one of my passion is to how we can, discover this kind of vulnerability. What kind of computational logic we can develop. And you see, this is very, simple example of this vulnerable code, which have this people call buffer overflow vulnerability, which allow essentially the hacker to just penetrating your system, install malware. And Another side of my research is to engage with much broader intellectual kind of traditions. For instance, what is the connection between the digital system and the human mind? I borrow insight from the German philosopher Immanuel Kant and the French philosopher Simondon to try to understand what we can say about the security nature of a digital system. So one of my research paper is about how we can borrow a Kantian philosophy of mind to sort of understanding the vulnerability, for instance. Kant famously said, human mind is not a thing, it's a unity. It's not something can take in parts. It's this famous Kantian reductionism. So I'm applying this kind of a philosophy from Germany and to understand, oh, maybe this computer program, if this has to be secure, must follow the same condition. It has to be unity, the functional integrated. So also interesting, engaged with French philosopher Simondon's concept of concretization to understand the evolution of digital objects. So this is my research. And just a few selected publication. This is more computer science publications, how to kind of understand the vulnerability in the source code. And my recent publication is how more interdisciplinary by nature, how to borrow insight from Kantian philosophy of mind to have a better understanding computational logic. And yeah, this is my really brief introduction of my work and my research. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Dr. Meng. The Q&A section is at the very end. So we'll be moving on to the presentations, and later we'll come back with for questions. Okay. All right, thank you. All right, our next speaker, since we're going alphabetically, our next speaker is Mr. Mao Kai Wang. He's a structural analysis engineer at Case New Holland. Mao Kai, please unmute yourself. Thank you.
Yep, I'm Mao Kai Wang. I received a Master of Science degree in mechanical engineering at Illinois Institute of Technology at Chicago, Illinois. Now I'm working at Case New Holland, which is agriculture equipment and the construction equipment and manufacturer. And in the company, I'm a structural analysis engineer. My work is to provide the analytical solution support on the agriculture equipment with a method called finite element analysis. Since I don't have the fancy presentation, let me just give you an example. For example, if you buy a new car, and the warranty of, for example, for an engine part is five years. My work is when the design engineer pass their engine part design to me, I do some math work on it, do some analysis on it to see if it's under design or over design. Under design means it cannot, maybe it can only run, for example, 3 or 4 years, which is not acceptable because the warranty cost will be pretty high for the company. And over design means it may run, like, for example, 9 or 10 years. Which means the cost is also high for the company, and so the car will be expensive, so people won't buy it. So my job is to make this part can run like a 6 or 7 years, because we still need to consider some margin on the part. That's a reason why some people may think, oh, after warranty, my car, this part of my car got worn or damaged or doesn't work. I'm sorry to tell that. That's because of the engineers' work behind it. So that's me.
All right, thank you, Malkai. And our very last panelist, but definitely not the least, is Dr. Mengqi Zhang, Assistant Professor of Health Science at Ball State University. Before she gets started, please note that her major, this career, the career that she's going to talk about, is a very much importance, especially during the pandemic, as all the health. If you're interested in any health science fields, please feel free to contact her directly later. So please get started, Dr. Zhang. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction, Tianqi. Hello, everyone. My name is Mengqi Zhang. I'm assistant professor at Ball State University. So I studied epidemiology and international health at Tulane University in New Orleans. And so before Tulane, I studied preventive medicine in Capital Medical University in China. I believe, as Tianqi mentioned, you heard about public health, especially during the pandemic. So as public health researcher, what do we do during the pandemic? So we have been exploring COVID treatment, designing campaigns to increase COVID vaccine acceptance. We also evaluate if certain policy intervention, for example, if wearing a mask could really reduce COVID transmission. So studying public health will not only make you feel needed, the most important thing is it is so much fun. So on this slide, I marked the places that I traveled to or studied due to my work in public health. So if you are like me, who are curious about health status among various populations in different regions, and or want to solve health issues, especially among vulnerable population, to improve population health, I believe public health is a great place for you. Okay, so before I move into detailed information on public health, I want to go through some of the terminologies. So the first question for you is, what is health? You don't need to answer now because I know many of you are online, but just to think about it. So health is not just the absence of illness. Health is also a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely, as I mentioned, absence of disease. So after we talk about the definition of health, I wanted to also think about what are some of the dimensions of health. So dimensions, I mean, like, what are the area of health when we talk about health, and what are the areas as public health researchers we want to focus? So the 6 dimensions, so many of the textbook may have different dimensions, but this is just for your reference. So when we talk about health, we're talking about environmental health, spiritual health, social health, physical health, intellectual health, and emotional health. Additionally, what do we mean by public? Public mean is a community. So we're not only focusing on individual, we want to focus on a group. So put everything together. So what is public health? Public health is a science and art of promoting health and extending life on the population level. We're not like doctors. We're not treating individual patient, but we want to focus on the health from a population level. So for example, we want to reduce infant mortality among the African American community, or we want to reduce COVID discrimination among Asian American community. So that's our focus. And there are also many disciplines of public health. We have epidemiology, biostatistics, biomedical science, environmental health science, social and behavior science, and also health policy and management. In the future, if you want to apply school in public health, majority of the really good school, they do have different departments. So for example, this is a web page of Tulane. I moved here. So this is a web page of Tulane. You can see the different departments based on different disciplines that I just showed you. And another school I strongly suggest, they have the best public health school. So Johns Hopkins, so Johns Hopkins even have more department compared with Tulane. So talking about where you can work. So this is a series of workshops I conducted the last year focusing on the Asian American community. So we talked about land your career in public health. So you can work in academia, you can be a professor like me, or you could work in government or non-government organization. So some examples including like some popular destination, including Bill Melinda Gates Foundation or UN. So one of my close friends, she's currently working in the IOM, so which is the International Migration Organization of UN. And you can also work in a pharmaceutical company, or you can also work in industry. So for example, you can work in a consulting company or also pharmaceutical company. So many of you may have a question. So how can I start? There are so many disciplines, but I don't have any experience. So there are actually many organizations specifically targeting on young adolescent or young adult like you. So for example, this is one of the organization hosted by Harvard University. So they have been recruiting high school student researchers or like college students to involve in research in different area. So the team I'm working with just worked with several high school students. And so one of the team, they just had several publications with several high school students. And also CDC also provides summer camps for high school students. So highly suggested. And if you are interested in this opportunity, I would suggest you to just search it online. I believe you will find many opportunities. So that's all I want to talk.
All right, thank you so much, Mengxi. And you make me miss Tulane University too, and I highly recommend our program in public health. And now we're rolling to the second round, the second section, where I'm gonna direct a few questions, and I expect all 5 panelists to answer the question if you could. And the first question is, what is the most common misconception that people have about your field? I'm sure a lot of other students are interested in this. Before entering a major, there are a lot of things that will be unexpected that you want to know. The most common misconception. So anyone wants to? Okay, please, Shannon.
Sure, I'll start. I think a common misconception, especially when you're entering, when you're in high school or entering college, when you think about biology, a misconception might be just how broad biology really is. And it really crosses a lot of different disciplines. So you could be, for example, I'm an ecologist. I study a branch of biology that looks at interactions with animals in the environment. But you can also enter fields like neuroscience or biomedical science or biochemistry. There's even avenues in biology that are very quantitative. So quantitative ecology and quantitative biology. So I think a misconception is maybe when you think of biology, you might think of studying organisms under a microscope when you're in your labs in college. But which is awesome and fantastic. And we do that too. But you could also be studying some of the largest animals on Earth, and it's just very broad. And I think, again, the misconception is how much variability there is and how much mobility in different interests you can pursue in biology itself. And also things like how quantitative it can really be. It can get very, very mathematic. You can work on really big data sets that look at, global climate change, or you could be looking at changes at a much more smaller scale. So there's a lot of different avenues to pursue. And if you find yourself interested, I encourage to keep looking at papers or finding scientists on Twitter. They're very active. Biologists are very active on Twitter. Find people with common interest and pursue that, because you'll be surprised how much is out there to learn.
I would say my field is city planning, really. And I would say a common misconception about city planning is very similar to what Shannon just said, that it's just, there's cities, there's blocks, there's towns, but in fact, the same kind of variability exists for city planning. You could be involved in engineering. You could be involved in, you could move to landscape architecture. There are incredible, amazing computer uses for information sharing that describes spatial relationships. So again, city planning is something that has a huge variety of opportunities within it. Yeah, I guess that's what I'd say.
Yeah, I don't know for the misconception. I don't know if it's still the misconception for now, because I have been away from school for who knows how many of years, and probably I'm out of it. But when I was in high school, my understanding of mechanical engineering is just solid interacting with each other, creating some mechanism. But when I went to college, I found out that it was not true. The mechanical engineering includes something like thermal engineering, fluid engineering, and solid mechanics, manufacturing, etc. And all these stuff combined with each other. That's called mechanical engineering. That's at that time I was shocked by that, but now I accepted that, because in the company I have to, even though my work is on the solid mechanics, I still need to work with the dynamic group or manufacturing engineering or some fluid analysis engineering to have the work done.
To professors, are you do you have anything to share about the misconception that your students might have?
Oh, sure. So I'm an epidemiologist. When people think about epidemiologists, they always think about, oh, you study diseases, which is actually not true. So I'm actually a social epidemiologist. I study behavior. I study how people's behavior changes, and I with a focus on displaced population. So we also study the effectiveness of policy. So if you choose public health, you will not only focus on certain diseases, you will actually focusing on everything which is related to public health.
But Dr. you want to skip this question?
So ask me, sorry.
Yes, I was asking you, do you want to skip the question about the common misconception, or?
Oh, sure. I can share a little bit of my 5 cents on this question. I think it's broadly speaking, in all STEM field, I believe the first and the most important misconception among students is perhaps, no offense, what is a science? So often especially in the English-speaking world, we tend to reduce the science into natural science only, and any humanity, social science has been sort of excluded from the science discourse. And I think this is a wrong understanding of science. If you study the Latin or German understanding of science, I mean, is much broader than just natural science. I think as some of the panelists mentioned, in 21st century, we see more and more this kind of interdisciplinary kind of approach, which require the combination of the different discipline knowledge, not just STEM education, but also anthropological dimension, linguistic dimension, social dimension. I think that's some sociologists use the terminology STEMism to describe this phenomena. I see that's a problem. We need to really encourage students to have explore much broader kind of a human domain knowledge, not just STEM. Although in this panel we emphasize on STEM. Another misconception in my own domain is precisely because of this narrow definition of what is science. Students and professors, most of them never ask deep question. What is the information, for instance? What is data? What is the computation? What is this fundamental question? And that I see as very damaging. Another misconception I think is related to this too is the student emphasis, too much on learning a particular technology and then missing the critical thinking skill. I think that's in the long run the problem too. I often see a good let's say software developer, often they're not from CS degree, English major, anthropology, biology. So that's perhaps some problem we can identify earlier in the study.
Well, yeah, indeed. Like a lot of people say, like the 21st century interdisciplinary field are the future for the 21st century. You can't only focus on like, one of the field. You have that's why the general education will come into play for all like 4-year colleges in the United States. Let's see. The second question is there a career path within the spectrum of your major that is largely overlooked by incoming freshmen?
I can speak to that actually. A career path, actually, and it may be very relevant for some students today. City planning is a really excellent career path to community organizing and actually political life, because it makes you think about the whole range of aspects of what is going on in a city. Public health, housing, environment, all of these things are part of what city planners think about, and therefore a city planning education, is something that can be really, really useful for people who are interested in community action. I don't think a lot of kids may think about that, but I think it's actually quite true.
I can think of maybe a career path that might be overlooked, and it's something I myself have just now really started to delve into, is this idea of urban ecology. And this is how animals are in a city, how they interact with this human wildlife interaction, how we can mitigate the effects to make habitats and make lives easier for both animals and people alike. I think this is something that has gained a lot of attention in recent years, in terms of and in relation to things like urban planning and designing buildings that are more bird safe. So we're preventing collisions for migrating birds, and taking a look at how animals are using their space, but also how people are using their space as well. And with urbanization continuing to grow, it becomes more and more important that we learn how to research and study these interactions to make life better for wildlife and humans alike. So it's something that's continuously starting to grow. We're seeing more publications coming out in this field, and it's a really interesting dynamic to kind of look at. So that's certainly something that I didn't necessarily think of when I started school. It's something living and working in New York City now that is just every day in your face, thinking about how we share the limited space that we have. So it's also something to consider in this field as well.
Especially for Staten Islanders, right? As we live with a lot of greens and with a lot of animals around. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I can speak from a public health perspective. I have many students in community health, so when they were talking about their career plan, they were telling me, I will be a leader, so I don't need to learn the hard science. So the hard science I mean is like statistics or like the other technologies you should know. But in the future, even you become a leader, you still need this methodology. You want to know if people who work for you did the accurate data analysis. So I strongly suggest if you choose public health, do not ignore epidemiology, biostatistics, choose these classes. And also, the technology has been changing so much. I don't think public health is actually really catch the rapid changes of technology. So I would suggest, in addition to some public health core courses, take some additional courses. For example, like the city planning courses like the GIS, geospatial analysis, and so also some classes from computer science, because you will use this information in the future. The thing we learned 10 years ago at school is actually out of date. So for us, we're still taking classes. And so please learn some new technology. Do not limit yourself to the core courses in public health. I think this also applies to other disciplines.
Very true.
Yeah, I think for the mechanical engineering, it's more related to the manufacturing. People may think that the industrial manufacturing is like a sunset industry, which means it's going down. But my understanding is not the case, because the core technology is still in the States, and people still having fun working within the manufacturing industry to like improve the making a car or tractors or whatever to make people's life easier. And so I think maybe it's not as popular or fancy like computer science or finance, but if you're interested in it, just you can still find fun in this industry.
In computer science, cybersecurity, I think there's one, from career perspective, I think there is, you know, some student perhaps after 3 years study, their mind is a little bit detached from, you know, mechanical or physical world. They dive into this what we call high level languages or pure data, and then there's as the Malkai mentioned this, actually there's a lot of a security issue in related to the manufacturing and the physical system too. I see there's a career path has been overlooked by students, and for instance well, just quite frankly, in the past 20 years, the higher ED in the North America has been really down a lot. A lot of like C programming or like a low level machine level coding curriculum has been just canceled. So that kind of knowledge became really like black art, if you will. A lot of students don't know about it. They don't couldn't make a connection between the cybersecurity, and which is usually considered as information only, with mechanical engineer and the manufacturing. So that's maybe something missing link in my domain at least.
Thank you, Ziyuan. The next question I prepared is I want to inspire the students. So what do you think is the best aspect of your major, apart from getting a well-paid job? Even though we're a career panel, but I want to get people inspired. So what are some of the gems other than getting a good a well-paid job? What do you think?
Sorry, I have my cat that's on my chair right now, but I'm happy to answer the question. I think one of the great aspects of going into this field is learning about the natural world and getting an appreciation for things you may not have noticed in the past. For example, one of the birds that I showed a slide of is probably about the size of your thumb. And when you think about this bird and how it travels from New York every year to the southern United States or Central America, or even birds that travel from here to, the the southern tip of South America and back every year. And you're just like, this is amazing. How did they do that? And when you start getting an appreciation for things like that, you start noticing more and more about the system that you're working with, whether it's birds or insects or butterflies. It's just really interesting to get that perspective and to feel very connected with nature. You start getting this appreciation. And when you get that appreciation, you start feeling more connected.
Louis, would you like to unmute yourself when speaking? Thank you.
Okay. Similarly, city planning lets you see the systems that are around you. It lets you understand that you are connected to transportation systems, to water and sewer systems. And it also, if you do have a career in it, and it is something you get to do, you get a feeling that you are making a difference in the world. And to me, that is really important.
Absolutely, yeah.
So talking about public health, it is just so much fun because our target population is always community. So for example, during the pandemic, I worked with refugees from different countries. I worked with Burmese refugees, South Sudanese, Afghanistan, and Nepalese refugees. And I talked with them and we have meetings to talk about their struggles. We design surveys together. And if you choose international health like me, you'll also be able to get travel opportunities. I travel to so many places because of my work. And you meet with people from different places, try to solve the issue with them together. That's just such a fun experience and exploration process. So I really enjoy that part. And if you don't want to talk with people, that's okay. You can be an epidemiologist or biostatistician, then you can get a really good salary. So there are really lots of choices.
Make me feel like I want to switch my field if it's not too late.
Oh, yours is so much fun.
Diva and Malkai, you want to inspire some students regarding on your major or your major field?
Actually, I totally agree with Eloy. Did I pronounce right?
Louis.
Elois. Yeah. I think for my job or for major whatever, it made me feel good when I see, for example, for me, when I see farmers. We make the farmers' life easier when they use our machine, and that's make their then make them our loyal customer. That's make me feel good, and also I think not only for the mechanical engineering, also for any job, we need a passion for that. We need to be interested in that, so that when we have the passion for that, then we can make more contribution to people.
Other than the career perspective in my domain, which is obviously good for cybersecurity, but there's something more than just finding a good, well-paid job in this domain. Is that if you study cybersecurity, you have opportunity to engage with the what we can call it unconventional knowledge. In particular, knowledge from hackers group, which is not really reducible to traditional, computational model. So I think that I feel that this type of experience is rewarding and also challenging intellectually. And most of the hackers they don't have any CS degree, and they just learn the skill by themselves, and they kind of a malware or exploitation skill they develop really challenge a lot of traditional pure CS knowledge, such as Turing machine model, information theory. So I found that aspect of in my own domain interesting, and also these hacking as a phenomena is intrigue us to think deeply about what is information, what is computation, what does that really mean. And this is one of the reasons I constantly in the recent few years kind of start to explore something other than just STEM education, like the philosophy. What Aristotle think about what is the data, for instance, how this is different from our modern understanding of data. I think this is what make at least for me interesting about study cybersecurity, and um, yeah, and also this is a different way of engaging with the different world. I mean this hackers kind of underground, you can call it oppressive form of knowledge, and which is not really accepted by the broader by the public school system, by the conventional computer science education. Engaging this type of oppressive knowledge make my life more complete and more open my eyes to different type of reality. So,
Thank you so much for all five of you for the insiders' thoughts on all three questions above. Now the very last question I prepared is where do prospective college students find more resources to explore this career option? This can be professional organizations or any other resources that most people are not aware of.
Is it something we should put in the chat? Because
Sure, yeah.
I would have
You
a
can-
whole bunch of, there's a site called Top 100 Urban Planning Blogs and Websites. I mean, it's really, it's so general that you could get lost. But at the same time, you could go to universities that you're interested in and checking out their planning departments.
Yeah, please feel free to paste them on the links onto the chat box. Thank you. And if there's something that really worth verbally mentioning, then please mention it verbally for all panelists. Thank you.
I did drop a link from the Texas A&M job boards. That's more geared towards wildlife biology, but you do see different types of jobs that are in there. This ranges from actual career level jobs to internships. So it's really geared to people of all ages and all interests within the wildlife biology. My other bit of information to when you're at the high school and college level is your professors have a wealth of knowledge, and if maybe they don't necessarily study what you're interested in studying, but they might know somebody or have collaborated with somebody who shares that interest. So building connections that way and reaching out, it could be a little intimidating at first, but once you start sending one email, it gets easier to start following up. So my advice is to cast a wide net and reach out to potential professors or collaborators or different organizations, because maybe some organizations don't advertise an internship, but maybe they offer things and offer different types of internships or projects that you could work on as well. So don't be afraid to reach out would be my bit of advice as well.
Yeah, I agree with Shannon. To always talk with a professor. So don't feel like, oh, the professor will not like to talk with me. You're totally wrong. Everyone wants attention. If you contact someone and tell them you are interested in their research, they will be really happy to reply your email. But make sure to send a polite email. And I also just sent the project based in Harvard in the chat box. So if everyone is interested. So I know they keep recruiting people, and they do have, so their current member do have high school students from different countries. They also have college students at the early stage. So feel free to reach out to them.
And also consider thinking that some of our participants might be on YouTube Live. It's also, I would also suggest panelists to verbally mention some of the most prominent associations or the way to search, to Google them, because they, for people on YouTube Live, they can interact through the chat.
American Planning Association for sure. And the really excellent urban planning schools are at MIT, Columbia, and University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill are three of the big ones. Ball State also actually has a great planning department.
I think if people are interested in manufacturing, they may subscribe to the magazine from SAE, which is Society of Automatic Engineers. In the magazine, it reads some most advanced technology in manufacturing in the States or in the world. So if people are interested, they can subscribe to the magazines. And if they are interested in a particular industry, like some vehicle industry, people know that Ford, GM, Chrysler, or aerospace industry like Boeing, Lockheed, or like what I do for the agricultural construction equipments. They could try like Case New Holland, John Deere, Caterpillar.
Yes, in terms of information security, there is not a, I mean, I can recommend some hackers club if student interested. So there's a there's a famous one. Could you see this one? Can everybody see this? The Black Hat community. So this is a pretty good one. They have annual conferences, and this is where a lot of high school hacker trying to show their skill. There's something.
Is anyone else able to see the screen?
I don't
Because
see
I
it.
see it.
Yeah,
you
I
see
don't
it?
see it.
I'm sorry.
It's just
let
white.
me let me do this again. Ah, man.
So this is what hackers do.
No,
Make
no,
it a
not
blank screen.
how can
I'm
you
sure
share
he's on
this?
their list.
Oh, there you go. So can you see it?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So this is probably one of the best hackers annual conferences, even without any academic credential. You can join in for the basically hobbies. But if you're really good at it, and there's always FBI, Homeland Security, defense contractor just waiting on the lobby of this conference, you can get hired quickly if you're really good at it. So that's the one thing I can mention. And did you another good conference I think is for hacker is let me see. Uh, this can everybody see this one? Chaos Computer Club.
Mm-hmm.
Can you see this?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yes,
this is
we do.
another good one. This is largely in Europe, though. But again, international conferences for the hackers. I often see a lot of good high school hacker join this club. I mean, I encourage students to explore some unconventional type of knowledge outside the traditional CS curriculum, and that's two things. Also, there's a lot of the different training, industry training, which is can be helpful as well, like SANS training, SANS. That's my 5 cents.
So if you could, so the panelists, if you could also post them onto the chat box so that people who are in Zoom can also see them. Thank you. And let's move on to the very last section where the participants can raise your hand first, and you can unmute yourself to ask questions.